Joining us today is Russell Shaw. He's the author of the new book, American Church. Welcome, Russell.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Glad to have you here. Now, you've written 20 books. You're a journalist. You did media relations for the U.S. Catholic Conference and the Knights of Columbus. Where do you find the time to do it all?
Well, I'm a quick study, and I move fast. Although it's getting harder and harder, frankly, as I get older. But I love writing, and I love the church, and put the two together, and I just find the time. That's all.
Well, I have a question. On your book cover, the title is American Church. The subtitle is The Remarkable Rise, Meteoric Fall, and Uncertain Future of Catholicism in America. You cover all that, and I guess the thing that caught my eye is the meteoric fall. What are you referring to right there, Russell?
Well, the heyday of American Catholicism really was the early 1950s. You look back, and everything was coming up roses then. The Catholic population was growing, Catholic schools were expanding, the church itself was more and more being recognized as a very significant factor in American life, American cultural life, and religious life. And then something happened. As a matter of fact, several things happened. But starting in the 1950s, we went into a period of decline, and the decline has continued. I'm sorry to say, up to this very day.
Now, you also cover 2 centuries of Catholic history in the U.S. So before the 50s, would you say that was basically a growing period or a flowering of the church in America?
Yes, it was the period of putting down roots. The 19th century, to capsulize it, was for American Catholicism, the era of massive immigration. All sorts of immigrant groups, Catholic immigrant groups, came over here from Europe. The Irish, the Germans, the Italians, the Poles, all of those, and many others. They came here by the thousands and the millions, all through the 19th and the early 20th centuries. And that was a time when the church was expanding and, as I say, putting down roots, building an infrastructure, building institutions and programs, and starting this process of Americanization.
Now, assimilation, which was, not only the goal, but also championed by church leaders at the turn of the last century, was very successful for Catholics in America. But you say it also may have been a curse. Why is that?
Well, because the secular culture itself, into which Catholics were being absorbed, changed radically. Most people would situate this beginning of that change in the 1960s. Up to that time, cultural assimilation made perfectly good sense for Catholics and for other newcomers. The culture itself was basically healthy, a culture founded on Judeo-Christian values, and with all its faults and flaws, basically a healthy environment for people of faith. Starting, as I said, in the early 1960s and continuing up to now, I'm sorry to say that the secular culture has changed radically and become increasingly a very hostile environment for religious faith and religious values. And that's what we're up against now, fighting that hostile secular culture and struggling to maintain our own religious commitment in its face.
Well, very much so, and I think, in your book you mentioned the Americanization of Catholics. Is that Americanization part of a secularizing of the culture, and did that lead to where we are? And I guess if it was such a good thing, how did it become such a bad thing?
Well, de facto, Americanization and secularization have become synonymous. It wasn't necessarily so, 50, 100, 200 years ago, but certainly in the last several decades, American secular culture itself has been increasingly secularized, and therefore entry into and becoming part of that secular culture has been a process of secularization, which means a kind of stripping off of religious faith, religious values, and the adoption of the mindset, the values, the worldview of secularism.
And what would you say in the 50s and 60s, when you pointed to when this ship started to go astray, what was the direct cause, would you say, of this Americanization, the secularization that led to where the church is today?
Well, on the side of Catholics and other groups as well, strangely enough, suburbanization, the movement of population groups out of the old center cities into the new suburbs, the old neighborhoods down in the center city had time and again been organized around parishes and religious congregations. Out there in the new suburbs, the old religious identity and the old identification with an existing parish just wasn't there. People had to start from scratch, so to speak, in an environment in which religious identity was not strong and religious faith was not strongly reinforced. So
let me ask you my last question then, Russell. What must we do? What must the church do to right this ship of American Catholicism?
I'm calling for two things in the book, John. The first thing I'm urging is a serious effort to reconstitute a strong, viable, and essentially evangelistic Catholic subculture. I think it's imperative that we do that for the sake of supporting and maintaining our own Catholic identity, and for the sake of being evangelizing people who try to bring the gospel values into this secularized world that surrounds us. And the other thing that I think is imperative for us is a genuine spiritual renewal, a rebirth of spirituality founded on the Second Vatican Council's insight that there is a universal call to holiness, and none of us can stand apart and say religious mediocrity is our game. We have to be exemplary Christians, and there's no question about it any longer.
Well, Russell, thank you very much for your insight. Sounds like a fantastic read, and we look forward to doing so and reading it and catching up with your ideas on this. This interview will air just before the Fortnight for Freedom coming up on June 21st, which lasts through July 4th. We want to thank Russell Shaw one more time for your insight today and your book, and best of luck to you with the new book, Russell. Take care.
Thank you, and it was great being with you.
Likewise, thanks.